You're listening to Last Signal Radio. I'm James Carter. Alongside me, as always, is Kate Vincent. And we need to get straight into this because what we are about to tell you has been confirmed by 3 independent observatories in the last 40 minutes. The International Astronomical Union has issued a Tier 1 planetary alert. Something has entered our solar system. Not a comet, not an asteroid, a planet. A rogue planet, a free-floating mass estimated at roughly 2.5 times the size of Neptune, has crossed the heliopause and is now moving through the outer reaches of our solar system on a trajectory that brings it within a distance that no natural body in recorded history has ever come close to achieving. Its designation right now is simply RP1, and its approach vector, based on gravitational modeling from the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile and corroborated by the Mauna Kea Observatories in Hawaii, is cutting directly through the inner solar system. That means it is heading toward us. The initial detection came from a routine deep field survey. It was flagged as an anomaly. Then it was flagged as a threat. Now it is being called the most significant astronomical event in the history of the human species.
I want to take a breath here because I think people hearing this right now, whether you're driving, whether you're at home, whether you're at work, you need to understand what we are actually saying. This isn't a drill. This isn't a film. This is real, and it is happening right now, above us, in the sky we have always looked at and trusted to stay the same. I have friends who work in research positions, people who've dedicated their lives to watching the stars, and I can tell you the calls I've been getting in the last hour from people I know personally, from scientists, from researchers. The tone in their voices is not academic. It is fear. Real, human fear. And I think we owe it to every person listening right now to sit in that for a moment before we talk numbers. Because behind every number James is going to give you, there are people, families, parents who have no idea what to tell their children tonight. I want us to remember that. I want that to be the frame through which everything we say tonight is heard.
Absolutely. And I want to be very clear about what we know versus what is still being modeled. What we know, RP1 has a confirmed mass of approximately 2.4 Neptune masses, which translates to roughly 14.4 Earth masses. Its surface, from spectral analysis, appears to be a frozen nitrogen-methane composite, consistent with a rogue world that has been drifting in interstellar space for potentially billions of years, far from any star, far from any warmth. It has no moons that we can currently detect. It has no rings. It is, in every way that matters, a dead world, a cold, dark, enormous dead world. Its velocity as it crossed into our solar system was measured at approximately 26 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. That is fast. For context, that is roughly the speed at which Earth orbits the Sun. The gravitational influence of Jupiter has already slightly altered its course, slowed it marginally, bent its path, and that bend is what makes this so catastrophic. Without Jupiter's interference, RP1 might have passed through on a cleaner arc. Instead, Jupiter's gravity has nudged it onto a course that places it significantly closer to the inner planets, to Earth. The current closest approach estimate, and this is still being refined, is somewhere between 8 and 14 million kilometers from Earth's surface. For reference, our moon is 380,000 kilometers away. RP1 will be, at minimum, 21 times that distance. But the gravitational force it exerts at that range is not trivial. It is civilization-ending.
I'm going to read something to you. It was posted publicly by Dr. Aisha Mensa, who is a planetary scientist at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, posted online within the last half hour. She wrote, "I have spent my entire career hoping to witness something extraordinary. I did not understand until tonight that extraordinary and beautiful are not the same thing." She's since taken the post down, but I saw it. and I saved it. Because that is the sentence that broke something open in me. This woman who has spent decades looking at the universe with joy and wonder is sitting in South Africa right now looking at data on her screen, and she cannot find the language to make it okay. Neither can I. And I don't think we should pretend otherwise. What we should do, what James and I are going to do, is stay on air. We're going to stay on air for as long as we can, and we are going to tell you everything we know, every update as it comes in, and we are going to do it honestly, because that's the only thing left that we can offer you.
Governments are beginning to respond. The United States Space Command confirmed the detection in a statement released 45 minutes ago. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, which was designed primarily to deal with asteroid threats, has convened an emergency session in Washington, D.C. The European Space Agency has issued a joint statement with Russia's Roscosmos, confirming the detection and noting that all existing space-based assets, including the James Webb Space Telescope, have been redirected to continuous observation of RP1. China's National Space Administration has gone silent for the last 30 minutes, which sources inside the agency are telling us corresponds to an internal briefing at the highest levels of government in Beijing. We have reports of emergency parliamentary sessions being convened in the United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, and Australia. The United Nations Secretary General is expected to address the General Assembly within the next 2 days. What we are not yet hearing, and I want to be very specific about this, is any coordinated public communication strategy, which means right now, across the world, people are finding out the way you're finding out, through radio, through their phones, through a neighbor knocking on their door. And that absence of leadership, that silence from the people who are supposed to tell us what to do, that is its own kind of catastrophe.
I've been watching social media as we broadcast. Our producer is feeding me updates, and the word that keeps appearing in English, in Mandarin, in Spanish, in Arabic, across every platform, every country, is the word sky. People are going outside and looking up. In Lagos, Nigeria, it's still light out, and people are standing in the streets looking at the sky. In Manila, in the Philippines, people have flooded into public squares. In Buenos Aires, Argentina, the Plaza de Mayo, which has been the site of some of the most profound moments in that country's history, is filling with people right now who have nowhere else to go and nothing else to do except stand together and look at the same sky. And I think that impulse, that deeply human impulse to go outside and look up, to find the people around you, to stand together, I think that is not weakness. I think that is exactly who we are when everything else falls away. I want the people who are doing that right now to know that I see them, that we see them.
RP1's gravitational effects are already being measured. This is not a future problem. This is a current, active, measurable problem. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States has logged anomalous tidal readings at stations in the Pacific Ocean, specifically at monitoring buoys off the coast of Alaska and in the waters north of New Zealand. These are not dramatic shifts yet. We're talking about deviations of roughly 30 to 40 centimeters from predicted tidal models. But those predictions were built on a model of the solar system that no longer applies. Every tidal model on Earth is now obsolete. The gravitational constant that governs how the moon pulls at our oceans, the force that has driven the tides since the planet formed, is now being supplemented by a second gravitational source that is actively moving closer. The math on what happens to tidal behavior as RP1 approaches is not complicated. The tides will grow. They will become unpredictable. Coastal cities, and we're talking about dozens of the most populated cities on Earth, are going to face surge events that the existing infrastructure was never designed to withstand.
I grew up in a coastal town, Whitby, on the northeast coast of England. I grew up watching the sea. And there is something so ancient in the relationship between human beings and the ocean, something that goes back tens of thousands of years, to the first people who stood at the edge of the water and saw it as both a boundary and a road. My grandmother used to tell me the tide was God breathing. I'm not a religious person, but I understood what she meant, the rhythm of it, the reliability, high tide, low tide, the same pattern every day since before any of us existed. That rhythm is ending. What's coming is not a rhythm. It's a disruption. And I think the people who live along the coasts of this world, who have built their entire lives around that relationship with the sea, I think they understand that on a level that none of us can fully articulate. I think somewhere in their bodies they already know.
We are now receiving reports from seismic monitoring networks. The United States Geological Survey has logged elevated seismic activity along the Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, covering an area from Northern California through Oregon, Washington State, and up into British Columbia in Canada. Simultaneously, the Japan Meteorological Agency has noted increased microseismic activity along the Nankai Trough, the fault system that runs along the southern coast of Japan and has been considered one of the highest risk megathrust earthquake zones on the planet. In Turkey, the Kandili Observatory has flagged unusual patterns along the North Anatolian Fault. These are not earthquakes yet. They are precursors. They are the Earth shifting slightly under stresses that are not yet at their peak. The gravitational pull of RP1, even at its current distance, is beginning to exert measurable tidal stress on the solid body of the Earth. Not just the oceans, the rock itself. The crust of our planet is experiencing forces it was not designed to accommodate. And as RP1 moves closer, those forces will increase in proportion to the inverse square of the distance, which means the closer it gets, the rate of increase is not linear. It accelerates.
A listener named Priya, writing in from Chennai, India, says she can see people in her neighborhood gathering on rooftops. She says there are children up there wrapped in blankets, and the adults are very quiet. She says it feels, her word, sacred, like a vigil. And I think that's the word, isn't it? A vigil. The whole world is holding a vigil. There's another message, this one from a man named Omar in Cairo, Egypt. He says his mother is praying, and his father is watching the news, and his younger sister is asleep. And he's sitting in the kitchen alone writing to a radio station in the middle of the night because he doesn't know what else to do. Omar, I want you to know that we are here. This station is here. And what you're feeling, that specific, strange, unbearable feeling of not knowing what to do with yourself when the world changes too fast to absorb, that is not weakness. That is being human. That is exactly what it feels like to be alive in a moment that is too large for any one person to hold.
We are now, based on the latest trajectory refinements from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, looking at a timeline. RP1 is currently beyond the orbit of Mars. It will cross Mars's orbital path within a matter of days. Closest approach to Earth is now being modeled at somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks from today. The range of uncertainty in that estimate is still significant. The gravitational interactions between RP1, Jupiter, Mars, and Earth are extraordinarily complex to model simultaneously. But 3 to 4 weeks is the working figure that planetary scientists are using. In those weeks, the effects we are already beginning to measure will intensify dramatically. We should expect tidal surges along every coastline on Earth. We should expect increased seismic activity globally. We should expect disruption to satellite systems, many of which operate in orbits that will be perturbed by the gravitational changes in the Earth-Moon system. We should expect effects on the atmosphere, not catastrophic ones immediately, but measurable changes to wind patterns and pressure systems driven by tidal forcing on the atmosphere itself. And we should expect effects on the Moon's orbit, which will in turn feed back further onto tidal patterns. The entire system, the system that has kept this planet stable for 4 billion years, is being disrupted. All of it, simultaneously.
When I was a student, I studied journalism. Then I worked on a small local radio station in Yorkshire for 2 years before I got my first national position. When I was a student, one of my lecturers used to say that the job of a journalist is to be present, to be in the room. Not just to relay information, but to be there as a human being alongside the people you are reporting to. I have been thinking about that a lot in the last hour. James and I, we are in a studio, we are behind glass and microphones, but I want to collapse that distance right now. I want to be in your kitchen with you. I want to be sitting across the table from you. I want to be wherever you are, in Mumbai, in Mexico City, in Helsinki, in Nairobi, and I want to say to you directly, person to person, I am scared. I am genuinely, deeply scared. And so is James, even though he won't say it on air. And that fear is not the thing we need to push past or get beyond. It's the honest response. It means we understand what's happening. And understanding it, even when it terrifies us, is the only place from which we can do anything at all.
Let's talk about what governments are being urged to do. There are essentially 3 categories of response currently being discussed at the international level. The first is evacuation, specifically coastal evacuation. Low-lying areas in Bangladesh, in the Netherlands, in Vietnam's Mekong Delta region, in the eastern seaboard of the United States from Miami to Boston, along the coasts of Indonesia, the Philippines, and Japan. These are areas that scientists are urging governments to begin clearing immediately, not in the event of because of. The tidal surges are already beginning. The second category is seismic preparation, reinforcing emergency response systems in regions that sit on major fault systems. The Pacific Ring of Fire runs through Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Central America, Mexico, and up the western coast of the United States and Canada. The third category, and this is where the scientific community and the political community are most catastrophically misaligned, is the question of what to do about the long-term destabilization of planetary orbits. Because RP1's passage through the inner solar system is not just going to affect Earth. It is going to affect the gravitational relationships between all the inner planets. The current models suggest that after RP1 passes, the orbital parameters of Earth, Mars, Venus, and Mercury will all be slightly, but permanently, altered. The question of whether those alterations are survivable over the long term is a question that planetary scientists are very carefully not answering in public right now.
There are children listening to this. I know that. There are parents listening who have children in the next room. There are teachers who will walk into classrooms in the morning and face 30 faces that have been awake all night. I want to say something to those children if they're listening, or if someone who loves them is listening and will find a way to bring this to them. What is happening is real, and it is very serious. And it is okay to be scared. The adults around you are scared too, even the ones who look like they're not. But here is what is also true. The sky above you right now, the same sky it has always been. The people who love you are still exactly who they are. Kindness still works. Holding someone's hand still works. And every single minute that passes is still yours. You still own it. No one can take that from you. Whatever happens, whatever comes, you have been alive. You have existed. You have mattered. That doesn't stop being true.
We're getting an update through from our Washington correspondent. The President of the United States has entered an emergency situation room session at the White House. The Joint Chiefs of Staff are present. Key cabinet members are present. What we are told, from a source who is not authorized to speak publicly, is that the primary discussion right now is not scientific. It is logistical It is about the question of public order, because the modeling that they are working from, which is the same modeling the scientific community has, includes scenarios in which significant portions of the United States coastal infrastructure are compromised within the next 2 weeks. The question being asked in that room right now is, how do you manage the movement of hundreds of millions of people? The United States coastal population, from the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic seaboard, and the Pacific coast combined, is estimated at over 120 million people. The infrastructure to move those people does not exist. The fuel supply chains to support that movement are not designed for it. The inland regions that would need to receive them do not have the housing, the food supply, or the water systems to accommodate them. And so the question being asked, quietly, in rooms where decisions get made, is not, how do we evacuate everyone, but rather, who do we tell, what do we tell them, and when? That question, and the moral horror of it, is what is happening right now in Washington, D.C., and in every capital city in the world.
I need to take a moment because I just received a message. Our producer has handed me a printed message from a listener who works as a nurse in a hospital in Karachi, Pakistan. She writes that she is on a night shift, and her ward is already receiving patients who have been in accidents, road accidents, because people are driving in a panic and the roads around the city are becoming dangerous. She says her colleagues are calm. She says the doctors are calm. She says the orderlies and the cleaners, the people who keep a hospital running that nobody ever talks about, are calm. She says the only person who is not calm is a very old man in her ward, a patient who has been there for weeks, who asked her tonight to open the window so he could smell the air. She opened it for him. He smiled. She writes that she doesn't know why she's telling us this. I think she knows exactly why. Because that man, that very old man in a hospital bed in Karachi, asking to smell the air on the night the world discovered what is coming, he is all of us. He is every single one of us, reaching for something real and simple and immediate in the face of the incomprehensible.
The first tidal event, with clear connection to RP1's gravitational influence, has been confirmed. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center has issued alerts for coastal areas of the Hawaiian Islands. A tidal surge, not a standard tsunami, which is driven by seismic activity, but a gravitationally induced tidal anomaly, has been measured at approximately 2.8 meters above the predicted high tide level at monitoring stations on the island of Oahu. The surge did not arrive with wave energy in the traditional tsunami sense. It was slower, a steady, inexorable rise, water climbing up beaches and over sea walls with what observers are describing as terrible patience. Portions of Honolulu's waterfront district are now underwater. The Royal Hawaiian Hotel, which has stood on Waikiki Beach for nearly a century, has its ground floor flooded. Emergency services are responding, but the roads in low-lying areas of the island are compromised. This is the first. It will not be the last. And it was a mild event by what is coming. A gravitationally induced tidal surge at RP1's current distance produced nearly 3 meters of anomalous water rise. When RP1 is at closest approach, the gravitational force it exerts on our oceans will be orders of magnitude greater. Scientists are modeling tidal surges in the range of 15 to 30 meters for the most exposed coastlines. I want everyone who is in a coastal area and has somewhere inland to go to hear that number. 15 to 30 meters.
Honolulu. I've been there. I went there on assignment 3 years ago covering a climate summit. I remember sitting on the beach at night and watching the water and thinking about how that particular shade of blue, that Pacific darkness, is unlike anywhere else I've ever been. The way the water moves there, the sound it makes. I'm thinking about the people who live there, not just the hotels, not just the landmarks, the people, the families who have lived on those islands for generations. Native Hawaiian communities that have held stewardship of that land and that coast for centuries. The fishermen, the people who know every reef, every current, every mood of that water. I'm thinking about what it means to watch the place that formed you, the landscape that lives in your body as memory, fill with water that has no business being there. I don't have the words for it. Loss that large doesn't fit inside words. But I want those people to know we are thinking of them, that their names, the names of their places, their islands, their histories, are not abstractions to us.
The seismic activity has escalated. A magnitude 6.4 earthquake has struck off the eastern coast of Japan, in the region of Fukushima Prefecture. The Japan Meteorological Agency has issued a tsunami warning for northeastern Honshu. This is a naturally occurring seismic event. It would be wrong to directly attribute it solely to RP1's gravitational influence. But the timing, and the fact that it is occurring along one of the most stressed fault systems in the world, at a moment when that system is receiving additional tidal loading from an external gravitational body, is not a coincidence that seismologists are willing to dismiss. Emergency services in Japan have activated. The evacuation protocols along the Tohoku coast, protocols that were rewritten and rebuilt after the devastating earthquake and tsunami of 2011, are being executed. The Japanese population has been through this before. The institutional memory is there. The warning systems are there. But the difference between 2011 and now is that in 2011, once the tsunami passed, the ocean returned to normal. This time, the ocean is not going to return to normal, not for weeks, and possibly, depending on what RP1 does to the long-term tidal patterns, not ever in the same way.
When the 2011 earthquake and tsunami hit Japan, I was a young journalist, and I remember watching the footage on a screen in a newsroom and feeling completely unable to process what I was seeing. The cars floating, the buildings dissolving. And then I remember reading in the weeks that followed about how the communities that had survived, the ones that rebuilt, the ones that came back, they came back because they had each other. Because community is not a soft word. It is not a metaphor. It is the actual physical, practical infrastructure of survival. The people who check on their neighbors. The people who know who in their street needs help. The people who show up at the community hall when someone organizes it. Those people, those relationships, that is the most resilient structure human beings have ever built. And right now, wherever you are listening to this, I want you to think about who is around you. Not in the abstract, literally. Who is in your building? Who is on your street? Who might be alone right now, scared, with no one to call? Because that question, that simple, immediate, human question, might be the most important question any of us asks tonight.
Power infrastructure is beginning to fail in affected coastal areas. In Bangladesh, where roughly 40 million people live in low-lying coastal regions that are among the most vulnerable in the world, multiple power stations in the Chittagong division have been shut down as a precautionary measure ahead of anticipated tidal surges. The city of Chittagong itself, which is Bangladesh's largest port and a city of over 9 million people, is partially evacuating. The roads leading north and east toward higher ground are clogged. We have reports from the Bangladeshi government that approximately 800,000 people have begun moving in the last 12 hours. Aid organizations, the Red Crescent, UNICEF, Médecins Sans Frontières, are mobilizing regional assets. In the Netherlands, which has spent centuries building sophisticated flood defenses, the Delta Works system is fully engaged, but the Rijkswaterstaat, the Dutch Water Management Authority, has publicly stated that the tidal anomalies they are beginning to measure exceed the design parameters of the existing infrastructure. The Dutch have built a system designed to withstand a 1 in 10,000 years flood event. What is coming is not a flood event. It is a sustained gravitational reorganization of the relationship between the Earth and its oceans. And no system of locks and barriers was ever designed for that.
I want to talk about something that I think is being underreported in these first moments, and that is the psychological weight of this on first responders. The emergency services workers, the Coast Guard crews, the hospital staff, the power utility workers who are right now working to keep systems running. These are people who trained for emergencies. They trained for events that have a beginning and an end. A fire that burns out, a flood that recedes, a medical crisis that resolves. What they are now being asked to face is an emergency with no endpoint that any of them can see. And I know from conversations I've had with emergency responders in disaster zones over the years that the thing that allows those people to function, the psychological mechanism that makes it possible to run toward danger, is the belief that the danger will pass. That after it's over, you go home. I don't know how you ask someone to keep functioning when you take that belief away. And yet they are doing it. They are showing up. In Chittagong, in Honolulu, in the coastal towns of Japan, in the Netherlands. They are showing up. And I think that might be the most remarkable thing I have seen in my entire career in journalism.
RP-1 is now within the orbit of Mars. Telescopes worldwide, and we mean worldwide, from the Very Large Telescope in Chile to amateur observatories in garden sheds across Europe and North America, can now detect it optically. It appears as a point of light currently, reddish-brown from the methane-nitrogen surface chemistry. In 2 days, based on projections, it will be visible to the naked eye. In 1 week, it will be the brightest object in the night sky after the moon. At closest approach, it will be visible in daylight. A second sun, not shining, not warm, not ours. Just there. An enormous, dark, gravitationally dominant presence dominating the sky. The psychological impact of that, of an entire civilization looking up and seeing, with their own eyes, an alien world that has come to end everything, is not something any mental health framework was ever designed to address. We are going to see panic on a scale that will challenge every social order that exists. We are going to see people make decisions, individual decisions, collective decisions, that are driven purely by the primal animal reality of perceived extinction. And I think it is important that we say that out loud now, so that when it happens, people understand that the person next to them is not a threat. They are simply afraid as everyone else.
There is an astronomer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, at the Subaru Telescope facility on Mauna Kea in Hawaii, who gave a brief statement to journalists 2 hours ago. In it, she said something that I have not been able to stop thinking about. She said, in astronomy, we are trained to observe without attachment, to see the universe as it is, not as we wish it to be. Tonight, for the first time in my career, I cannot do that. Tonight, it has a face. I think about what it takes to say that, to spend a career cultivating the discipline of detachment, of clear-eyed observation, and then to stand in the presence of something so enormous that the discipline dissolves, that it has a face. That is a sentence from someone who looked at the data and for a moment stopped being a scientist and became simply a human being confronting something too large for the tools she was given. I think that's where most of us are right now. Our tools aren't big enough. Our frameworks aren't big enough. And maybe the response to that isn't to find bigger tools. Maybe the response is to set the tools down and just be here together, in what is.
We have now received official casualty figures for the initial events. In Hawaii, the tidal surge in Honolulu has resulted in 43 confirmed fatalities, primarily in low-lying residential areas where the water rose faster than emergency alerts reached people. 211 people are currently listed as missing. In Japan, the magnitude 6.4 earthquake off Fukushima has caused 17 confirmed deaths, with over 300 injuries. The subsequent tsunami warning resulted in mass evacuation of coastal areas. The protocols worked well, and seismologists believe the human toll could have been catastrophically higher without them. In the Philippines, anomalous tidal behavior in Manila Bay has flooded portions of the Pasay and Parañaque cities, areas that are already among the most densely populated and flood vulnerable in the world. The Philippine government reports 127 deaths from flooding and the collapse of structures in the lowest lying districts. These are the numbers from the first day, from events that are a fraction of the severity of what is still approaching. I am going to say those numbers slowly. 43 in Hawaii, 17 in Japan, 127 in the Philippines. Those are the people who did not wake up this morning knowing this would be their last day. Those are the people who matter more than any projection, any model, any scientific figure. We will say their names if we learn them. We will not let them become statistics.
187 people in the first day. I want everyone listening to hold that, not as a number, as a fact about specific human beings who had lives and names and people who loved them. In Manila, I have reported from Manila, I know that city. The communities that live along the waterfront in Parañaque are some of the most resilient people I have ever encountered. People who have rebuilt after typhoons, after flooding, after poverty that would have broken communities elsewhere. They rebuilt because they are extraordinary. And now 127 of them are gone in a single day, and it is day one. And the world is still barely paying attention because the sheer scale of what is coming is consuming all the available attention of every government, every media organization, every scientific institution. And I am afraid that in the avalanche of what comes next, those 127 people in Manila will be forgotten. So I am saying their names. I mean that I am holding them in my mind in this moment on this broadcast and asking every person listening to do the same. They were here. They mattered.
We have now entered the second week. RP1 occupies an area of the sky visible with the naked eye that is approximately 3 times the apparent diameter of the full moon. It is not luminous. It does not shine. But it is present in the sky in a way that no object except the sun and moon has ever been present in the sky during recorded human history. It is dark, a dark, looming presence, its surface detail visible on clear nights as subtle variations in shade and texture. Astronomers who are still at their posts, and many are even now, are reporting that the disk of RP1 is large enough that atmospheric refraction at the horizon creates a slight reddening effect, similar to the moon rising. Except that it rises and sets on a different timetable than the moon. And it has no phases, because it does not reflect sunlight the way the moon does. It absorbs most of what it receives. It is, in the words of one astrophysicist at the European Southern Observatory, who spoke to us off the record, a hole in the sky. Those were the exact words used, a hole in the sky. I find I cannot improve on that description.
A hole in the sky. Yes, that is exactly it. You know, there's a piece of literature, I studied it years ago, a very old Chinese poem about a scholar standing in a courtyard at night looking at the moon and feeling the moon looking back. That sense of mutual recognition between a person and the sky. The sky is something that knows you're there. I have always loved that. I have always found it comforting, the idea that the sky is not indifferent, that it participates in us somehow, that the moon and stars are a kind of company. What is in the sky now does not look back. It does not participate. It is not company. It is mass, gravity, physical force with no consciousness, no awareness of the civilization it is dismantling. And there is something in that, in the radical indifference of it, that is its own kind of horror. Because we have built our entire religious and philosophical and cultural architecture around the idea that the universe is in some sense for us, or at least with us. And what is looking down at us from that sky right now offers no such comfort. It just is. Enormous and real and entirely without regard for us. And yet here we are, looking up at it. Still here. Still looking.
Global casualty figures as of this broadcast. The combined death toll from tidal surge events, storm surges amplified by tidal anomalies, flooding of coastal urban areas, and earthquake events that seismologists now attribute, with varying degrees of certainty, to the tidal stressing of fault systems, stands at approximately 62,000 confirmed dead. The missing persons figure across all affected regions is above 400,000. These are the confirmed and documented figures. The real figures, from areas where communications have failed, where rescue operations have not reached, where the infrastructure to count and report does not exist, are almost certainly multiples of those numbers. In the coastal districts of Bangladesh that are now submerged, accurate accounting is essentially impossible. In the affected island communities of Indonesia and the Philippines, where connectivity has failed, where emergency services are overwhelmed or simply gone, the human reality is not captured in any number I can give you. I can only tell you that 62,000 confirmed deaths in 11 days is a rate of loss that exceeds any single natural disaster in recorded history. And the event that is driving it has not yet reached closest approach.
62,000 people. I need to sit with that for a moment before we go on. 62,000 lives. Each one of them somebody's everything. Each one of them. A morning routine, a favorite song, a way of laughing, a person who called them by a name no one else used. A kitchen they knew by heart. A walk they took every day. A worry they carried. A hope they held. 62,000 of those. Gone in 11 days. And the number will grow. It will grow enormously. I don't want to pretend I'm processing that. I don't think any human being can process that while it is happening. What I can do is insist that we do not allow it to become abstract, that we do not let the size of the number become the reason to stop feeling each one. We owe them that. The 62,000 and the ones who are coming after deserve to be felt individually. Even if we can only hold a few of them at a time, we hold who we can.
Military responses globally have escalated. NATO has activated its Article 5 provisions for the first time ever in a context that is not a military attack, a formal recognition that a natural phenomenon can constitute an existential threat requiring collective defense response. The primary military role at this stage is not combat. It is logistics. Military assets, transport aircraft, naval vessels, ground vehicles, medical units, are being redirected globally to support civilian evacuation and emergency response. The United States military has deployed assets to over 30 countries at the request of host governments. The Chinese People's Liberation Army has deployed naval assets to assist with evacuation operations in Southeast Asia, operating alongside Indonesian, Philippine, and Vietnamese national forces in an unprecedented and essentially improvised regional cooperation. In the Indian Ocean, the Indian Navy, which has the largest operational capacity in that region, is conducting evacuation operations from Maldivian atolls that are entirely below the projected surge level. The entire population of the Maldives, roughly 530,000 people, is being evacuated. There is nowhere in the Maldives that will be above water at closest approach. The island nation will cease to exist as a habitable territory. A culture, a language, an entire way of life that has existed for millennia will become a memory.
The Maldives. An entire country. I am trying to understand what that means, not politically, not geographically, but in the human terms of what it means to be a Maldivian person today. To know that the place you are from the specific arrangement of coral and sea and lagoon and light that made you who you are, will be gone. And not because of war, not because of political failure, not because of anything that was done or could have been undone. Simply because a planet with no name and no history in relation to you came through the neighborhood. I spoke briefly before we went on air tonight to a colleague who has a friend currently working with the Maldivian government's evacuation coordination. She told me that the government has made extraordinary efforts, extraordinary given the circumstances, to ensure that community groups, that families, that neighbors are kept together in the evacuation, that they are not just moving people, they are trying to move communities, so that when the land is gone, the people still have each other, so that the thing that is Maldivian still exists, even if the islands don't. That is a kind of wisdom that I find almost unbearable to contemplate, because it speaks to a grief and a dignity that is beyond anything I have language for.
In the past 48 hours, 3 significant developments have occurred that I want to address carefully and with precision. First, the orbital mechanics of the Earth-Moon system are measurably changing. The Moon's orbit is being perturbed by RP1's gravitational influence, which is now strong enough to produce detectable effects at lunar distances. The average Earth-Moon distance has increased by approximately 400 kilometers in the past week. That is a change, a meaningful change, to a gravitational relationship that has been essentially stable since the formation of the Moon. The implications for tidal patterns, both short and long-term, are being actively modeled by every planetary science team that remains operational. Second, the orbit of Mars has been measurably altered. Mars is currently in a position in its orbit that received a significant gravitational nudge from RP1 during close passage, and preliminary orbital data suggests Mars's eccentricity has increased, meaning its orbit is now more elliptical than it was 2 weeks ago. Third, and perhaps most consequential for the long term, preliminary modeling suggests that Earth's own orbital parameters, the shape and timing of its orbit around the Sun, will be measurably altered after RP1's passage. By how much, and with what consequences for long-term climate and stability, depends on variables that will only become clear as RP1 moves away. We are not currently able to say whether Earth will remain in the habitable zone long-term. That sentence, which I have been sitting with for an hour before saying it on air, is the most significant thing I have ever said in my career.
Not able to say whether Earth will remain in the habitable zone. I want everyone who just heard that to understand that James just said something that no journalist, no human being broadcasting to an audience has ever said before. That the possibility exists that the planet will be pushed into a condition where it cannot sustain us. Not just the coast, not just the cities, not just specific regions, the whole thing. And I want to be honest with you. That sentence sat on my desk as a note, written by our science editor, for 3 hours before this broadcast because nobody wanted to be the first person to say it to the public. Because once it's said, it can't be unsaid. It becomes part of what we are all carrying. And now it's said. And I want you to know that I'm not going to minimize it or dress it up or tell you it's probably going to be fine. I don't know if it's going to be fine. I don't think anyone does. But I can tell you this. Right now, tonight, on this planet, billions of people are alive. The sky above you is still the sky you know. The people you love are still the people you love. And that is true right now, in this moment. And no amount of uncertainty about future moments changes the reality of this one.
We are now in the 3rd week. RP1 fills approximately 15 degrees of arc in the sky. To put that in perspective, the full moon covers about half a degree. RP1 is now 30 times wider in apparent size than the full moon. On clear nights, it dominates the sky the way nothing except the sun dominates the sky. It has become impossible to ignore in any visual sense, and its gravitational influence is now catastrophic. The global tidal anomaly is averaging 11 meters above predicted levels in open ocean measurements. In coastal areas with natural tidal amplification, the Bay of Fundy in Canada, the Bristol Channel in the United Kingdom, the Gulf of Khambat in India, the surges are reaching figures that have submerged infrastructure that has existed for centuries. The city of Bristol, England, population 460,000, is partially flooded. The Clifton Suspension Bridge, which has spanned the Avon Gorge since 1864, had its lower pylons submerged for the first time in recorded history during the last tidal peak. In Mumbai, India, a city of 21 million people built on a peninsula that is barely above sea level under normal conditions, the northern suburbs are underwater, and the evacuation is nowhere near complete. The death toll in Mumbai alone over the past 3 days stands at over 14,000. 14,000 people in one city in 3 days.
Mumbai. If you've been to Mumbai, you know it. If you haven't, you can't quite imagine the density of it, the intensity of it. It is one of the most alive cities on Earth. The noise and the color and the unbelievable weight of human presence compressed into that peninsula. The Dabawalas who have delivered lunch boxes across the city every single day for over 100 years without a GPS or a smartphone, guided entirely by a system of symbols and collective memory. The fishermen of Worli and Versova who go out every morning before light. The street food vendors who know every customer by name. The film industry, the banking district, the 10 million people living in Dharavi who have built an economy and a community from almost nothing. That is what is underwater right now. 14,000 of those people are gone, and millions more are trying to move through a city whose roads are flooded, whose train network is non-functional, whose electricity is intermittent, carrying whatever they could grab, trying to find higher ground in a city where higher ground is scarce. I don't know how we carry this. I don't know how we hold all of this at once, but we have to try. We have to at least try.
The global death toll has passed 400,000. We are reporting that figure based on aggregated government reports, UN agency estimates, and the modeling of independent research institutions. The true figure, factoring in areas of complete communications blackout, regions where civil governance has effectively ceased, and the significant lag between events occurring and their being reported, is almost certainly above 1 million. We are approaching the threshold at which international organizations typically classify a situation as a mass atrocity event, except that there is no perpetrator, no political response that changes the dynamic, no negotiating table, no ceasefire to call. There is only the physics, and the physics has approximately 3 more days until closest approach. The seismic situation globally has crossed into territory that seismologists are describing as unprecedented in the instrumental record. In the past 48 hours, a magnitude 8.2 earthquake struck off the western coast of Chile, the most powerful earthquake to strike the Americas in over 60 years. The resulting tsunami affected the entire Pacific basin. A magnitude 7.6 struck in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. A magnitude 7.9 struck in the Hindu Kush range, affecting Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the northern regions of India. Seismic monitoring networks are recording more major earthquakes per day than at any point since systematic recording began. The fault systems of the world, which have been accumulating stress across geological timescales, are releasing all at once, because the gravitational load that has been added to the lithosphere is not uniformly distributed, and the systems that were closest to their failure threshold have gone first. And they are going.
I need to tell you something that I've been sitting with for several days that I haven't known how to say. My family is in the north of England. My brother, his wife, their 2 children. They are in a small town in North Yorkshire, well inland, at good elevation. They are safe, for now. I spoke to my brother this morning. He asked me how I was doing. He asked me how I was doing. And I didn't know what to say because the honest answer is that I am holding together by a very thin thread and I am terrified. And I am more grateful than I have words for that he and his family are safe. And I am sick with grief for everyone who isn't. He said to me, "Keep talking. Just keep talking. Because people need to hear a voice. And so that is what I'm doing. Whatever else is true tonight, there's a voice on this radio. And that voice is a person. And that person knows you're there. And we are going to stay here, James and I, and we are going to keep telling you what is happening, and we are not going to leave you alone with it."
Closest approach is now 24 hours away. The sky, and I am reading this from field reports because we are in a studio, the sky is barely recognizable. RP1 now subtends roughly 22 degrees of arc, nearly 44 times the apparent width of the moon. It rises in the east as a vast, dark, textured presence, dark brown and rust-colored, with visible cloud banding, with the clear circular outline of a world. It is not beautiful. It is not ugly. It is simply too large for the frame of reference that human beings possess for looking at the sky. Reports from rural areas with dark skies describe it as something that seems physically wrong, as though reality itself has developed a fault. In cities, the light pollution reduces it to a dark, slightly reddish region where the stars are absent. But it is there. Everywhere on Earth tonight, in some form, it is visible. The gravitational tidal effect on the world's oceans at current range is producing surge events every 6 hours as Earth rotates. The entire global coastline is now effectively in a state of continuous emergency. There is no coast anywhere on Earth that is not experiencing extraordinary tidal conditions. The concept of a stable, predictable coastline, which has governed human settlement patterns for 10,000 years, no longer exists.
I want to tell you about something that is happening right now in many places around the world that I think is important. People are singing. In shelters in inland Germany, where over 2 million people have been relocated from coastal areas of the Netherlands and Belgium and the North German plain, people are singing. Old songs, folk songs, songs that belong to specific regions and communities and that have been passed from generation to generation. In a shelter in Stuttgart, a group of primarily Dutch evacuees sang a song, a traditional Dutch song, that a researcher at Utrecht University has identified as dating back to the 1600s. It was written during a period when the Dutch were managing a different kind of existential threat from the water. And 500 years later, the descendants of the people who wrote it are singing it in a shelter in Germany. I don't know what to make of that except to say that it is true, and it happened, and it matters. The continuity of culture in the face of extinction, the insistence on singing the old songs, that is not escapism. That is defiance. That is the human species saying, we were here, we made this, it belongs to us, and we are not finished with it yet.
This is closest approach day. I am going to be as precise as I can with the facts as we have them. RP1 passed its closest point to Earth approximately 16 hours ago. The minimum distance achieved was 11.2 million kilometers, at the upper end of the range that had been projected, which is the most favorable possible news in a day that has almost no favorable news. At closest approach, the gravitational acceleration exerted by RP1 at Earth's surface was roughly 1.4% of lunar tidal forcing, which sounds small, but represents an enormous perturbation to the system because it operated continuously and it combined multiplicatively with the lunar tide, rather than simply adding to it. The tidal surge events at closest approach were measured at specific locations. At the Bay of Fundy in Canada, normally the highest tidal range on Earth, The maximum water level during closest approach was 28.4 meters above the pre-RP1 baseline. The shoreline of Nova Scotia was fundamentally altered. The town of Wolfville, which sits at the head of the Minas Basin, was completely inundated. In the Bristol Channel in the United Kingdom, surge levels of 19 meters were recorded at Cardiff, Wales. The Welsh capital is a city of over 350,000 people. Evacuation had been in progress for over a week. A significant portion of the population had relocated. But not everyone. Never everyone. The death toll from the Bristol Channel surge event alone is currently estimated at above 8,000.
Cardiff is my mother's city. She was born there. She moved north when I was born, but she always said Cardiff was where her heart was. She died 6 years ago. I have been thinking about her all day. I have been thinking about the streets she walked as a girl, the places she told me about, the way she talked about the waterfront and the bay. And I want to say this. I want to say this for her and for every person who has lost a place today, a city they loved, a landscape that held their memory. The place is in you. Even when the physical place is altered beyond recognition, the version of it that made you who you are, that lives in your body, in the way you move through the world, in the stories you tell, in the things you love that you learn to love there. Cardiff is in my mother, and my mother is in me, and what floods the streets and changes the shoreline and alters the view cannot touch what is inside a person. That is not sentiment. That is fact. What we carry in ourselves is ours beyond any physical event. I believe that. I have to believe that.
RP1 is now moving away. Its trajectory, confirmed by global observatory networks, is taking it onto a hyperbolic exit path, meaning it will not remain in the solar system. It will continue outward, decelerating slightly as it climbs out of the sun's gravitational well, and eventually return to interstellar space. The rogue world that came to us from the dark will return to the dark. It will carry with it the gravitational fingerprints of its passage, slight alterations to its own path from the interactions with Jupiter, Mars, and Earth. And it will leave behind, in our solar system, a permanently altered architecture. The orbital parameters of Earth have been measurably changed. The year, the precise length of Earth's year, the exact shape of its orbit, will be slightly different going forward. By how much, with what long-term consequences for climate and the energy balance of the atmosphere, with what effects on agricultural seasons, on the water cycle, on the long-term habitability of the planet. These are questions that the scientific community is only now beginning to seriously model. We are not able to answer them today. We may not be able to answer them for years. What we can say is that the Earth is still orbiting the Sun, that the Sun still exists, that the Moon, though its orbit has been altered, is still there, that the planet is still here. Whatever comes next, that is where we begin.
RP1 is moving away. The sky is changing. Even now, even over the course of this broadcast, the dark presence that has dominated it is beginning, almost imperceptibly, to reduce in apparent size. It will take weeks for it to recede to a point of light again, months for it to disappear entirely from view, and long after it is gone from the sky, it will still be here, in the changed coastlines, in the altered orbits, in the cities that are no longer there, in the millions of people who are not where they used to be, in the children who are growing up in shelters and camps who will carry this as their first memory of the world. It will be here in every coastal city that has to rebuild, in every agricultural region that has to recalibrate to a slightly different year, in every nation that has to figure out what it means to be a nation when the geography that defined it has changed. The reckoning is not over. In some ways, it is barely beginning. But something has also happened that I was not fully prepared for. People are still here, in numbers that are staggering, that represent, in the context of what came, an extraordinary resilience. People are still here. The global death toll is enormous, and I do not minimize it for a single second. But billions survived. Billions of human beings on this altered, grieving, damaged planet are still here.
Let me give you the final figures as we currently have them, with the caveat that reporting from large areas of the world remains incomplete, and these numbers will continue to rise as information becomes available. Confirmed dead, 1,942,000 people. That is the figure across all causes directly attributable to RP1's passage. Tidal events, storm systems intensified by tidal anomalies, earthquake events, infrastructure failures, secondary effects, including disease outbreaks in displacement camps and accidents during mass evacuations, displaced persons, people who have left their homes and not yet returned or who have no home to return to, is estimated at 312 million. Infrastructure loss. 14 major coastal cities across the world have experienced damage sufficient to render them uninhabitable in their current state, including portions of Dhaka, Mumbai, Ho Chi Minh City, Jakarta, Miami, Rotterdam, and Lagos. The global agricultural calendar for the coming year is deeply uncertain. Changed orbital parameters mean changed solar exposure patterns, and the disruption to coastal agricultural regions from flooding affects food security for hundreds of millions of people. The global economy, insofar as that concept still has meaning, has effectively ceased to function in its previous form. The task of reconstruction is so large that no existing framework, political, financial, logistical, is adequate to it. We are, in the most literal sense, beginning again from what is left, which is still an enormous amount.
I want to end, not to end this broadcast because we are not ending, we are staying on air. But I want to end this chapter of what we've been saying with something true and simple. The world is different. It will never be what it was. The loss is real, and it is permanent, and it deserves to be mourned fully without apology for as long as mourning is needed. But loss and ending are not the same thing. This planet has been through extinction events before. It has been hit by objects from space before. It has had its atmosphere changed, its oceans altered, its surface reshaped, and life found a way. Not because the universe is kind. We have learned, if we didn't know before, that the universe is not kind. But because life, when it exists, has a quality, a tenacity, a creativity, an insistence on continuing that is remarkable beyond any words I have. Human beings are alive. Millions more than yesterday's count had feared. Billions more than the worst projections. They are in shelters and on hillsides and in inland towns and in the ruins of coastal cities, and they are doing what people do. They are talking to each other. They are looking for each other. They are building fires and sharing food and holding children and asking what comes next. That is not small. In the context of what came for us, that is everything.
The recovery will take generations. I want to be honest about that timeline because I think false optimism is its own kind of cruelty. The rebuilding of the world's coastal infrastructure, the recalibration of global agriculture to the new orbital reality, the resettlement of hundreds of millions of displaced persons, the political reconstruction of nations whose territories have been fundamentally altered, the psychological processing, at a civilizational scale, of what humanity has just lived through. None of that happens in a year. None of it happens in a decade. The children being born in evacuation shelters right now, in the mountains of Nepal, and the highlands of Ethiopia, and the interior of Brazil, and the elevated regions of Indonesia, those children will grow up in a world that is rebuilding itself. They will do the rebuilding. They will make the decisions about what is worth keeping and what must be left behind. They will write the history of this event in ways that we cannot anticipate, from a perspective that we do not yet have. They will be shaped by what happened in ways that neither they nor we can fully understand yet. And they will do it here, on this planet, in this solar system that has been changed but not ended, under a sky that is slowly becoming familiar again. That is not consolation, but it is truth. And truth is the only foundation from which anything real can be built.
There is a listener. We've been receiving messages throughout this broadcast. A listener named Anna, who writes from Reykjavik, Iceland. Iceland, which sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge and which experienced significant seismic activity during the passage, but which by virtue of its elevation in geology was spared the worst of the tidal events. She writes, I have been listening to you for a long time. I listened when I was scared and when I was grieving and when I didn't know what to feel at all. I want to tell you that last night, for the first time in weeks, I went outside and I looked at the sky. RP1 is still there, but it is smaller now. And around it, for the first time in weeks, I could see stars. Just a few in the gaps around it. But stars. The same stars that were there before all of this. And I thought, they made it. They were here before, and they are here now, and they don't even know anything happened. And somehow the absolute indifference of the stars, the fact that they just kept being there, was the most comforting thing I have ever experienced. Anna, I think that might be the most important thing anyone has said to us in this entire broadcast. The stars kept being there, and so remarkably did we.
There will be commissions and inquiries and reports. There will be new international frameworks for planetary defense, for the detection and characterization of rogue bodies entering the solar system. There will be a great deal of debate in the years ahead about what humanity could have done differently, whether earlier detection would have changed outcomes, whether better international coordination could have reduced the death toll. Those are necessary conversations. They should happen. But they are not tonight's conversation. Tonight, across this planet, people are sleeping in places they did not sleep a month ago. Children who have never been more than a kilometer from their homes are in tents in mountain ranges they've never seen. Families that are intact are holding each other. Families that are broken are holding whoever is left. Emergency workers are sleeping in shifts. Doctors are operating in field conditions they were never trained for. Engineers are beginning to assess the damage to infrastructure that will take years to understand fully. Scientists are looking at orbital data with eyes that are trying to see the future of this planet from what they can measure today. All of it, simultaneously, right now. The world is not ending. The world has changed. And change, however brutal, however catastrophic, however unasked for, is not the end. We know how to be in a changed world. We have always had to learn that. We are learning it again. As we always have. As I believe we always will.
This is Last Signal Radio. I'm Kate Vincent. James Carter is beside me. We have been on air for a very long time. We are going to stay on air. Whatever is happening where you are, whether you are in a shelter or in your home or in a place you never expected to be, we are here. The signal will continue for as long as we have power, and when we lose power, we will find another way, because that is what people do. They find another way. I want to close this part of our broadcast with something that I believe very simply and completely. Every human being who is alive on this planet right now has survived something that no generation before them has ever faced. That is an extraordinary thing to be. You are extraordinary. Not because of what you did or how brave you were or whether you made the right choices under impossible pressure, simply because you are here. You are present. You are part of the great, strange fact of humanity continuing. In Karachi and Reykjavik and Santiago and Nairobi and Manila and Rotterdam and every unnamed place in between. You are here. We are here. The stars are here. The altered, damaged, surviving, extraordinary, still-breathing world is here. And that, in all its grief and complexity and uncertainty, that is something. That is, in fact, everything.
Stay with us. We will keep broadcasting as long as we can. Updates will continue as information becomes available. If you are in need of emergency assistance, please continue to monitor official government channels alongside this broadcast. If you are safe and able to help someone who is not, please do. That is not a platitude. It is the most concrete, measurable, immediately impactful action any human being can take tonight. Look to your left, look to your right. Who needs something that you can provide? Do that thing. That is the beginning of reconstruction, not the infrastructure, the relationship. The infrastructure follows. It always follows the relationship. This is James Carter, and this is Last Signal Radio. And we are still here, and we will not stop until there is nothing left to say. And tonight, there is still everything left to say. So we're going to keep talking.